Hi, I'm Naila. My parents told me not to come to my own sister's wedding because her in-laws didn't want me there. But that wasn't the hardest part. The hardest part was realizing I had paid for most of it. The flowers, the venue, even the dress she wore to insult me. They smiled in my face while erasing me behind closed doors. So I did what they never expected. I stopped funding the fantasy. But how do you walk away from a family you built your whole life around and still live with yourself? The message came through just as I was pouring coffee into a chipped ceramic mug. I didn't check it right away. Thought maybe it was another appointment reminder or an automated confirmation from the grocery app. But when I finally picked up the phone, the words on the screen hit me like a slap across the face. Don't come to Luna's wedding. Travis's family doesn't want you there. No, hey, no sorry. Just that. Short, clinical, and very much on brand for my mother. I stared at it, rereading, thinking maybe I'd missed context. Maybe there was more. But that was it. Just one line that turned my stomach. The room was still. My coffee cooled untouched beside me. The early spring breeze drifting in through the kitchen window couldn't even cut through the silence that wrapped around me like a vice. I didn't reply. Not at first. What was I supposed to say? Thanks for the heads up? Guess I'll cancel my hotel now? A million responses came to mind, some sharp, some passive, some begging for clarification, but none of them made it past my lips. Instead, I sat back in the chair, staring at the screen until it dimmed. Then I tapped the message again. Read it once more. Travis's family doesn't want you there. I wasn't sure what offended me more, that I was unwanted by people I barely knew, or that my own mother had delivered the message like it was a change in weather. Casual, predictable, unavoidable. The next morning, Sandra texted me again, this time with something even more laughable. Lunch Thursday? Just us. I should have said no. Should have told her I was busy, or that I didn't do lunches with people who disowned me via iMessage. But something in me, maybe foolishness, maybe the urge to look her in the eye, made me text back. Sure. We met at a little cafe on 12th South. The kind of place with reclaimed wood tables and overpriced kale bowls. She'd already ordered a sparkling water when I arrived. No hug, no smile. She just waved at the chair across from her. Glad you could make it, she said, like I was being difficult. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak just yet. I scanned the menu, ordered something I knew I wouldn't eat, and folded my hands in my lap like I was waiting for a verdict. So, she started, sipping her drink. I know the text caught you off guard. Caught me off guard? It was short, I said carefully. She shrugged. I didn't think a long explanation would help. I could feel the heat rising behind my eyes, but I kept my voice steady. Help who? You? Luna, Travis's parents? Her eyes narrowed slightly. You always make things about you, Naila. That's exhausting. There it was, the first knife. I'd known it was coming. I leaned back. I was the one uninvited. I think I'm allowed a reaction. Sandra didn't flinch. She just pushed her napkin around her plate. Travis's family is very traditional. They have expectations. Luna didn't want drama. Right, I said. Because excluding your sister is the definition of peace. She gave me that look, the one she'd used since we were kids, the one that said I was overreacting again. You and Luna are very different people. She fits in better. I don't remember paying the bill. I know I did because I found the receipt later in my bag, crumpled like a forgotten insult. But the entire second half of that lunch was a blur. Her voice, her words, her calm composure while she essentially explained how I'd never been the daughter she could display to the world without explanation. On the way home, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even tell a friend. I walked the 3 blocks to my condo in silence, took the stairs instead of the elevator, and opened the door to a place that at least had the decency to reflect who I was. Minimal, quiet, mine. I sat down on the edge of the bed, kicked off my shoes, and stared at the ceiling for a long time. The light was soft, the shadows familiar, and still, the silence was heavy. That was when it clicked. They'd already chosen. Not just today, not just with this wedding, but years ago. In every holiday photo where I was cropped out, in every oops birthday they forgot. In every call that started with, "Can you help?" and ended with, "Well, you're good at that stuff." I'd been a wallet, a sidekick, a useful footnote, and now that I'd become inconvenient, uncomfortable, they wanted me erased. So be it. I opened my laptop, created a new spreadsheet. I titled it Family Ledger. Line by line, I began documenting every dollar, every favor, every deposit I'd made over the last 5 years. $3,800. Rent help for Luna and Travis during the layoff, $5,000. Dad's retirement penalty reversal, $612. Engagement shoot. Deposit $2,500. Venue deposit. Non-refundable paid from my account. $180. Save the date website. Annual domain plus design $900. Airbnb for bridal party. By the time I was done, the sun had dipped below the skyline. My coffee was still on the counter. Cold, forgotten. I didn't feel petty. I felt prepared. I closed the file and stared at the screensaver glowing faintly across the room. And then I whispered to the stillness. They wanted peace. They can keep it. Without me. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was upset, not anymore. It was something else, something colder, like a wire had been cut inside me, and I could finally stop pretending it wasn't buzzing all these years. I turned off the lights, shut my laptop, and sat in the dark until morning. Not morning, planning. Around 8 a.m., my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I ignored it at first, but then it chimed again. I know things are tense, but could you send me $300 for the flowers? I'm having trouble with my card. Mom. There it was. No. How are you feeling? No. I know things were hard yesterday. Just a straight-up request like nothing happened. Like I hadn't just been told, without hesitation, that I wasn't welcome at my sister's wedding. I stared at the message long enough for the screen to dim. Then I turned the brightness back up, just to screenshot it. I didn't answer. I didn't owe her a response. What I owed myself, finally, was honesty. They didn't care. Not really. Not about what they took, or how often they took it, or how it made me feel like an afterthought who should just smile and write the check. I set the phone down and made myself a cup of coffee. This time, I drank it hot. Mid-morning, I opened the family group chat out of habit. I had no idea why. Maybe part of me was still trying to track the disaster unfolding from afar. But when I tapped the icon, the screen flashed with a small, impersonal message. You are no longer a participant in this conversation. Just like that. Not blocked, not muted, just gone. I tapped again, then went into Luna's profile. Her latest post was already getting dozens of likes. Final fitting done. Can't wait to be surrounded by love. Smiley faces. Hearts. Sandra commented, So proud of you, baby girl. Glenn dropped a thumbs up. Travis's sister posted a string of pink dress emojis. One of Luna's bridesmaids replied, OMG, it's going to be perfect. And there I was, erased, not even worth the courtesy of a heads up, just deleted. You don't accidentally remove someone from a group chat, not when they've been the one organizing vendor files and sharing spreadsheets, not when they've been the one replying to catering emails. You only remove someone like that when you've decided their usefulness has expired. I sat still, staring at the screen, the silence around me almost respectful in its clarity. This wasn't about forgetting. This was intentional. Later that afternoon, I went to the hall closet, pulled down an old cardboard box labeled Luna Grad Party in Sharpie. Inside were receipts, unused invitations, and a photo album I'd made for her as a gift. She never posted about it, never thanked me beyond a quick, looks great. I'd organized the whole event, called vendors, picked a playlist, even cleaned up after half the guests bailed. But the only photos she shared online were of her and her friends. I wasn't in a single one. You only see the sparkle when you don't have to sweep the floor. I sat on the couch with that album on my lap, flipping through pictures of balloons, handwritten cards, and Polaroids that no longer meant anything. Then I stood up, walked it all to the trash chute, and let it go with one smooth drop. That night, I made a new folder on my laptop. I didn't title it Revenge or Receipts at first, just something simple. Evidence. But it didn't stay simple for long. In that folder, I began collecting every piece of documentation, every dollar I'd loaned or given, every email where I was tasked to just take care of it, every message where they guilted me into helping. I found 87 screenshots in my phone alone, 6 spreadsheets, 12 PDFs. I added the PayPal statements and invoices. I saved the WhatsApp voice notes where Luna joked about how I'd pay for anything if they made it sound urgent. I renamed the folder. Enough. It wasn't rage. It wasn't grief. It was something more dangerous. Precision. The part of me that had always stayed quiet was now wide awake and sorting files by date. The next morning, I didn't answer the texts, didn't like Luna's post, didn't send the flower money. I started backing everything up to 2 cloud accounts and a secure drive. If they wanted peace, they could have kept it by not turning me into their backup plan. And if they thought I'd just walk away without a sound, they forgot one thing. Silence doesn't mean weakness. It means I'm building something stronger. The next morning came without sunlight. The sky hung low and gray, like even the weather wanted to stay quiet around me. I'd barely slept, again, but my mind was sharp, almost unnervingly so. There was no fog, no hesitation, just focus. I poured myself a cup of black coffee and sat at the small desk in my bedroom, opening a blank spreadsheet like I was stepping into a courtroom with myself as the only witness, prosecutor, and judge. The title at the top of the document read, Unpaid Debts, Emotional and Financial. I started slow. Wedding website, $245 Airbnb for out-of-town guests, $783. Luna's emergency rent, October, $3,800. Deposit for rehearsal dinner, $1,250. Canva Pro subscription they used, $119. Bridal shower decorations, they never reimbursed, $392. Spa booking for Luna and bridesmaids, $680. It went on. Page after page. No tears, no frustration, just data. Clean, brutal facts. Every time I'd helped without being asked. Every time I'd been asked and didn't hesitate. And every time I'd been dismissed afterward like I'd simply filled my role. By the time I reached line 43, I felt calmer than I had in weeks. I wasn't spiraling. I was documenting. And that meant something. That afternoon my phone buzzed. I didn't recognize the number, but I picked up anyway. Naila, Mom's voice. Calm, too calm. We're having dinner tonight, just family. To talk, no judgment. I hesitated. She added, Luna will be there, and your father. It would mean a lot. I wanted to laugh. Instead, I said, where and when? 6:30, at the house. I showed up in a navy dress shirt and dark jeans. Simple, intentional. I didn't bring anything, not even a notebook, just my presence. If they were going to ambush me, I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of thinking I came ready for war. The table was already set when I arrived. Luna and Travis were seated, side by side like magazine models. Clarice and Jerome stood in the corner, whispering. My parents sat at each end like this was some kind of mediation. No one smiled. Thanks for coming, Sandra said as she gestured to the chair left open, the one furthest from Luna. I sat down, folded my hands, waited. It didn't take long. Luna was the first to speak. I just want to say this has all gotten really out of hand. The wedding is supposed to be a happy time, and you've made it uncomfortable. I didn't flinch. I made it uncomfortable? I asked quietly. She looked at me like I'd missed the point. You've been passive-aggressive, not replying to messages, not helping anymore? I didn't respond. Travis jumped in. My family isn't used to conflict. You being involved, your attitude, it's not easy for them. I looked at him evenly. You mean honesty? Clarice stepped forward. We just want everything to be smooth. You're making it harder than it needs to be. No one spoke up for me. Not Dad, not Sandra, not even Jerome, who once told me I was the only person in the family who remembered his birthday. But when Luna started tearing up, the room shifted. Suddenly, Mom was reaching for tissues. Dad put his hand on Luna's shoulder. Travis leaned in and whispered something only she could hear. Clarice glared at me like I'd broken something precious. No one asked why Luna was crying. No one asked what I had gone through. I sat there looking at the plate in front of me, untouched. A salad I didn't order, with a vinaigrette I didn't like. I counted the olives. 6. When the performance ended, I stood up, quietly, no grand speech. As I turned to leave, Dad followed me to the hallway. He didn't say much, never did. But just before I reached the door, he leaned in and said, "You always were too sensitive." I paused. Then I turned to him and said evenly, "And you always were too silent." He didn't reply. I drove home in silence. The streets of Brentwood were empty, washed in the soft yellow of street lamps. No music, no podcasts, just the quiet truth that I'd known all along, but hadn't been brave enough to say out loud. At home, I opened my laptop, clicked open the Enough folder. I created a new draft email and titled it, "Venue Contract, my name on it." I attached the PDF. I saved the email. I didn't send it, not yet. But I would. The next 2 days passed without noise. I didn't hear from my parents. No calls, no attempts to smooth things over. It was as if my silence had made me invisible. Again. On the third morning, I found a small yellow envelope in my mailbox. No return address, no markings, just my name, typed and taped across the front. I knew it wasn't junk. The weight of it felt intentional. Inside were printed screenshots, dozens of them. Not emails, not receipts. These were from a private group chat, one I wasn't supposed to see. Luna. "We'll get him to pay for the cake too. Just guilt him about being the only sibling. Works every time." Clarice. "He's not even invited. Problem solved." Jerome. "Wait, he's still doing the website? That's wild." Luna again. "He's too nice. It's pathetic." And just above all that venom, there was a sticky note in unfamiliar handwriting. "You deserve to see this. T." I didn't need to guess who T was. Only one person had ever called me after I left a family gathering early and said, "You don't deserve what they do to you." Therese, my cousin on Dad's side, always quiet, always watching. I hadn't spoken to her in months, but now she was speaking in the clearest way possible. I stared at the printouts, hands steady, breathing measured. My name wasn't in the chat, not once. I wasn't tagged, I wasn't asked about. I was just the bank account with a pulse, the person they kept on standby until they no longer needed me. I scanned the last screenshot. It was Clarice again. "He's dramatic. I mean, come on. It's not like he's family. And that one stung more than I expected. I walked over to my desk, slid the envelope next to my laptop, and opened a new folder titled Contingency. Then I sent Travis a message. "I received something. I think you should see it." He replied within minutes. "You always twist things. You made my mom uncomfortable from the start." No pause, no curiosity, no, "What is it?" Just blame. Wearing black to brunch? Questioning the flower cost? You never know when to let things go. You always turn stuff into drama. Again. I stared at the screen, blinking slowly. I hadn't expected an apology, but I thought, naively, that the proof might spark doubt. Instead, he defaulted to the family line. "You're the problem. You always were." I didn't reply. I grabbed my keys and drove to the grocery store. Not because I needed food. I just needed air, motion, distance from the walls that had been listening to me scream inside for years. I parked under a flickering streetlight and sat there, the engine still humming. In the quiet, I remembered a night 4 years ago when Luna called me crying about her rent being overdue. Travis had just lost his job, and they were 3 months behind. Their landlord had threatened eviction. I wired $3,800 within 10 minutes. No questions asked. Back then, I called it love. Now I realized it was utility. I wasn't family. I was a solution. That was the pattern. I picked up the tab. I absorbed the criticism. I stayed silent. I made things easier for everyone but me. That was done now. Back at home, I printed the screenshots. 3 sets, just in case. 1 in a fireproof folder, 1 in my digital vault, and 1 I kept in a manila envelope under the mattress. Then I opened my email. Rowena. She used to work with me in project compliance. Sharp, skeptical, and just paranoid enough to be effective. She ran a small agency now, digital forensics. Her business motto, truth leaves metadata. I typed 1 line. Still interested in verifying digital evidence? I hit send. No attachments, just the question. It didn't take long for her to reply. Always. What are we burning down? Rowena's message stayed open on my screen for almost an hour. I didn't respond right away. Not because I was unsure, but because I was organizing the next move like I was preparing for trial. That night, I sat with my laptop, scrolling through my old PayPal activity. It started as a simple task, categorizing transactions tied to the wedding. But then I saw it, $10,000, for Luna's tuition urgent, sent to my mom's account almost 3 years ago. Back then, she'd called in tears, said they were behind on payments and Luna might have to drop out of school. I wired it without hesitation. No questions, no contracts. Family was family, right? Except something didn't line up. I pulled up the date, August 4th. Then I cross-checked it against public business records. Rowena had taught me how years ago. In a few clicks, I found it. Nimbus Edge LLC. Registered August 9th members listed. Clarice V., Luna S., Jerome D. Filed through a virtual agent in Franklin, Tennessee. No mention of me. No hint that the seed money for their startup had come from my savings account. The money wasn't for tuition. It was a cover. They lied and built a company on that lie. I leaned back in my chair and whispered out loud, "They're not just using me. They're laundering my loyalty." Around 10 a.m. the next morning, my phone rang. Unknown number, but I had a hunch. "Hello?" A pause. Then her voice, smooth, southern, practiced. "Naila, this is Darlene, Travis's mother." I stayed quiet. "I just wanted to call because I know tensions have been high, and I think we all want what's best for Luna." Still, I said nothing. She continued. "Look, I know you feel left out, and that's unfortunate. But Luna's in a fragile place right now. Any stress could ruin her big day. So maybe if you could just hold off on anything disruptive?" There it was. I gave a dry, almost amused chuckle. Disruptive? Like being erased from the family? Or just being asked for money after being told not to show up? She hesitated. "We're not trying to exclude you. We're just curating a safe experience for family." That word, curating, as if I were a toxin to be filtered. "Then maybe you should have excluded my money too." A long breath on the other end of the line, then low and cold. "Just don't do anything you'll regret." She hung up before I could reply. I stood in the kitchen, still holding the phone. The audacity of her call didn't even shock me. Not anymore. It confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a strategy. I grabbed a pen and a post-it. Wrote one sentence. "No one who benefits from me gets to erase me." I folded it and stuck it above my laptop, just under the Enough folder tab. Then I opened a new email to Rowena. Subject, verified ownership, body. "Need your forensic eye on Nimbus Edge. I want to know who's legally liable." While waiting for her response, I went through the company's online presence, their brand voice, their press kit, their investor bios. Clarice listed herself as co-founder. Luna was labeled as strategic growth. Jerome was head of outreach. They'd taken my financial lifeline and built a digital fortress, pretending they'd done it all themselves. I gathered everything. Screenshots, registration docs, tax ID numbers. I printed them. Then I added a clean copy of my PayPal transfer receipt, highlighting the transaction ID and date. I slipped it all into a manila envelope and sealed it with clear tape. On the back, I wrote in Sharpie, "Clarice V. Open carefully." I walked the 3 blocks to the nearest mailbox, the autumn air dry and sharp against my skin. I slid the envelope through the slot and listened for the soft thunk of it dropping inside. They had one chance to acknowledge the truth quietly. They chose not to. Back in my apartment, I shut the door behind me and let the lock catch. For a second, I didn't move. I just stood there, leaning against the wood like it might hold me up better than my spine could. Outside, the wind kept screaming like it had something urgent to confess, some storm-born truth that could never quite break through glass and concrete. But inside, the silence cut clean. It wasn't peace exactly, more like precision. And that was enough. That was what I needed. I didn't bother taking off my coat. I didn't turn on the lights or put on music or start boiling water like I normally would when trying to soothe a nervous system wired too tight. I didn't want comfort. I wanted clarity. I wanted control. I walked straight to my desk, powered up the laptop, and opened the wedding dashboard. The loading bar crawled across the screen, then it hit full. The list stared back at me. First up, the florist. They'd sent mood boards and proposal PDFs and 6 different options for peony substitutes, because Clarice said actual peonies were fiscally irresponsible. I'd spent 3 weekends getting the color palette just right: mauve, dusty rose, sage, all for a wedding I no longer recognized, much less belonged to. I hovered over the vendor contract and clicked cancel service. One confirmation later, the arches, the centerpieces, the fake Pinterest magic, they were gone. Next, the photographer. He'd been Luna's find. One of those guys who only shot in natural light and talked a lot about capturing moments of raw emotion. Cancelled. Then, the venue. That goddamn barn. The one Clarice called rustic chic, and Luna said would pop on reels. I'd booked it, under my name, paid the deposit from my account. Added the insurance myself, because they didn't have time to worry about the boring stuff. I scrolled to the cancellation option and clicked. A message popped up. Are you sure you want to proceed? I smiled. Just slightly. The kind of smile people give in courtrooms and final acts. Never been more. I chose the insurance refund option. They'd get 90% of their dream wedding back? Technically. But dreams aren't quite as dreamy when someone else has the receipt. When the foundation of your fairy tale is an unpaid invoice in someone else's inbox. I wasn't done. I logged into Canva Next, deleted the wedding signage. Gone were the pastel welcome signs with elegant serif fonts. Gone was the seating chart I spent an entire weekend building after Clarice insisted she wanted a clean UX flow. Gone was the custom-built RSVP site that integrated with her livestream audience's wedding predictions. I deleted it all. Then I renamed the shared wedding planning folder. Ask Clarice for help. I logged out. That could have been enough. That's where a normal person might have stopped, chalked it up to a moral victory and gone to bed. But I'm not a normal person. I opened a second browser window, logged into Nimbus Edge's internal payroll system. Clarice must have forgotten to revoke my admin credentials. She always liked being the face, the brand, the voice. But behind all that, it had been me who wired the structure. Me who set up the permissions and filters and protocols. One oversight on her part. One open door. Her mistake. I scrolled to the pending payroll queue. Friday's batch. Luna, Travis, Clarice, Jerome. I clicked Pause Disbursement. A prompt appeared. Are you performing a temporary freeze for internal audit? Yes. In the memo line, I typed, Funds pending review, initiated by NS. I pressed Enter. The second my finger left the key, my phone lit up like a detonated beehive. 5 missed calls from Sandra. Luna's message. What are you doing? This is a disaster. Clarice. This is theft. You'll regret this. Jerome. Are you serious right now? This is illegal. I turned the phone face down. Then I made tea. Chamomile. 4 minutes steeped, stirred in honey. Let the cup rest in my palms. Sat at the kitchen table and listened to the hush between moments. I wasn't panicked, not anxious, no tightness in my chest, no shame in the back of my throat, no whisper of guilt crawling up my spine telling me I'd gone too far. Because for the first time, I knew I hadn't. I hadn't overreacted. I had finally acted. Period. As the kettle cooled, I opened the laptop again, but not for deletion this time, for documentation. I typed an email to Rowena. Subject, if they retaliate. Body, we go public. Let me know when files are verified. Send, then another draft. This one to Clarice. No fanfare, no apology, no preamble. This isn't sabotage, this is balance. Send. Above my screen, a yellow post-it note fluttered slightly in the leftover breeze from the window draft. I'd written it months ago, back when things were just starting to fray. No one who benefits from me gets to erase me. And I meant it now more than ever. I had spent years building facades for people who couldn't stand their own reflections, held up mirrors so they could pose in front of them, while I disappeared behind the frame. Not anymore. The files were loaded. The paper trail was clean. The freeze was legal. The leverage was real. And I was done being the architect of someone else's empire of smoke and mirrors. Let them call lawyers. Let them scream. Let them bluff. Let them make their next move. By the time the kettle clicked off and the tea had cooled beside me, Rowena's reply lit up my inbox like a fuse. The subject line read, Clarice V. Metadata match confirmed. There were no long explanations in the email body, just the facts. LinkedIn burner profile, =, Clarissa's home IP plus device ID, MacBook Pro serial ending in 29GF. Timestamp matches your vendor cancellation day. Attached were screenshots of a LinkedIn profile called Wedding Watch TN, a bland-looking account with no real photo, one post, and a whole thread of replies. Every comment under trending vendor ads made jabs like, "Word of advice, don't trust unstable clients who fake generosity." Emotional leverage is not partnership, it's manipulation. Beware of consultants who pretend to support you until they blow it all up. None of them used my name, but they didn't need to. Clarissa's style always had that surgical cruelty, like slicing with a scalpel instead of a machete. Clean, silent, precise. I opened the profile, read through the trail again, and caught the common thread. They were trying to label me dangerous, to finances, to feelings, to reputations. And for the first time since this all began, I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. I copied the metadata Rowena had attached, pasted it into a new document labeled Digital Defamation Clarice 5. Then I opened Instagram. The post hit me before I even tapped on it. Luna, standing under fairy lights in what I recognized as the final wedding fitting photo. The caption? "Some people in your family can't stand when it's not about them. That's not love. That's control." She tagged Travis, Clarice, Sandra, Glenn. Not me, of course. I wasn't worth tagging, just worth pointing at. The comments poured in like open applause. "Proud of you for setting boundaries. Let go of the toxic ones, girl. Blood isn't thicker than peace." I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't even screenshot. I already knew how to save what mattered. I opened a private folder, uploaded the LinkedIn screenshots, Clarissa's registration documents, the PayPal receipt, and now this public post. I typed out the timeline. Burner created May 11th. Payment freeze initiated May 13th. Luna post May 14th. They were moving fast, so I had to move with more precision. I scrolled through the post again, then closed the app. I wasn't going to reply in the comments. That would give them what they wanted, proof that I'd cracked. Instead, I opened my notebook and wrote a single line. They weaponize silence and perception, so I'll respond with proof. I sat with that thought for a moment. Then I opened my encrypted drive. Inside, every document Rowena had validated, the lawyer-reviewed contracts, screenshots of all unacknowledged expenses, the burner account metadata, the online post slander. I created a zip file, password protected it, and uploaded it to a secure cloud link. Then I sent 3 emails to my attorney, subject, pattern of targeted defamation body, all files attached. We'll need pre-litigation letters if it escalates. To a local reporter who covered family-run tech startups, subject, Nimbus Edge behind the facade body. Curious if you're still doing stories on founders who build on borrowed ground. To my accountant, Jenna, subject, forensic review request, client, Nimbus Edge crossflow. Body. Please begin tracing expense links, especially where company funds and family favors overlap. Each email included the download link. When I hit send on the last one, my phone buzzed again. Blocked number. I let it ring once, twice. Decline. Seconds later. Hope you're proud of what you've started. Unknown. I smiled and powered the phone off completely. They had built their story on quiet exploitation and assumed I'd never gather the words to contradict it. But now, mine was on paper, backed by files, and in the hands of people with printing presses, subpoenas, and spreadsheets. Let them try to spin the story. I just sent mine to people who can print it. The vineyard was the kind of place people posted about. Every corner was designed for a moment that looked effortless, but took hours of planning and 3 Pinterest boards. Fairy lights zigzagged through an open-air pergola like constellations placed by hand. White tablecloths fluttered softly in the breeze, anchored by centerpieces that screamed, "We don't try too hard," even though everyone knew they absolutely did. It was perfect in the way only money and insecurity could create. It was curated perfection, a living photo op, and it made my skin itch. I parked far enough from the main entrance that no one would see me arrive, just a line of hedges between me and the event. 1 breath, 2. I slid the flash drive into the inside pocket of my coat, next to the folder already prepped with documents. Cold metal, warm fabric. I liked the contrast. It grounded me. I stepped onto the crushed gravel path. The crunch beneath my boots didn't match the carefully chosen background music floating from inside the tent. It didn't belong, and neither did I. A few heads turned, uncertain. The maitre d' had just spotted me, his steps quickening toward my direction, likely to ask if I had a reservation. But I kept walking, straight past him. That was the point. No one expected me. And for once, that worked in my favor. Inside the rehearsal dinner tent, the atmosphere was aggressively elegant. Soft jazz floated from a live quartet. Candlelight flickered on crystal wine glasses. There was a rhythm to the evening, laughter in carefully timed bursts, conversations that only dipped so deep before returning to safety. The entire scene was polished to the point of parody. At the head table stood Luna, dressed in champagne satin, surrounded by Sandra, Clarice, and Travis. They looked like a lifestyle ad. They weren't laughing anymore. Their eyes followed me as I crossed the floor. I didn't nod, didn't smile, didn't give them the out of pretending this was just awkward timing. I walked directly to the center table, reached into my coat, pulled out a small black Bluetooth speaker. I set it down on the linen and pressed play. "Excuse me," I said calmly. "No anger, no theatrics, just volume, sharp and deliberate. This will only take a minute." The room quieted. Clarice's voice came first, clear and dripping with disdain. "He'll pay. Just guilt him. He's stupid when he thinks he's helping." Then Travis, with a sneer that sounded like it barely required effort. "She creeps me out. She's always watching like she's about to write you up." And finally, Luna's voice, low and falsely reassuring. "She won't be at the wedding. Trust me, I'll handle it." A wave of gasps rippled through the tent. Plates stilled mid-bite. Forks froze. Sandra's napkin hung limp in her hand. Glenn looked like he'd been shot and didn't know where the bullet came from. And the string quartet, bless them, stopped playing mid-note, bowstrings caught in the air. I stood still. Let the silence afterward ring out longer than the audio itself. Clarice found her voice first. "That's out of context." I turned to face her. "The context is this. You built a business with my investment, my strategy, and my time. You grew your status off my silence, and then you tried to erase me. From the company, from this wedding, from my own family." She opened her mouth, then shut it again. I pulled the folder from my coat next and walked it over to Zach, Travis's best man. More importantly, the only person in this entire circus who wasn't tied to anyone by blood, marriage, or money. Neutral ground. "This is for you." Inside the folder were receipts totaling $11,438.22 transferred from my accounts to Sandra's and Clarice's, categorized as consulting expenses and marketing reimbursements, wire logs dating back 18 months. A screenshot of Clarice forging my digital signature on a business agreement, and a notarized summary from Rowena's firm, verifying the entire chain of digital evidence, time-stamped, IP traced, metadata locked behind me. A clear voice spoke. Kristen, standing tall, wearing her corporate badge with just enough visibility. She was real authority in this room. Her calmness was louder than any scream. "Files have been authenticated, metadata verified, this wasn't edited." Clarice went pale. Luna's lips parted, then pressed together. Travis stood, but said nothing, just looked trapped in a conversation his charm couldn't talk him out of. Zach looked down at the folder, then back up. "I'm calling off the wedding," he said, quiet but clear. Then the room imploded. Luna let out a scream, high-pitched, sharp, and real. Nothing curated about it. Sandra finally dropped the napkin and covered her mouth. Clarice spun and stormed out like the tent had burst into flames. Glenn trailed after her, not saying a word. Travis moved to grab Luna's hand, but she slapped it away, her mascara already running. And I didn't wait for applause. I walked back to the coat rack, slipped my hand into my pocket, and turned around one last time. "You didn't want me here," I said. "You made that clear." They stared at me, hollow and stunned. "But what you didn't count on was that I'd stop trying to stay." I paused, then added, just loud enough to echo under the tent. "You wanted me gone. Now you get to keep what's left." I stepped out into the cool vineyard air. The fairy lights behind me flickered. The night pressed in, clean and quiet. I expected footsteps, voices, some dramatic exit chase, but no one followed. No one dared, because the thing about being underestimated for years, when you finally speak, when you finally act, it's deafening. And they heard me, every last one of them, loud and clear. The air outside the vineyard felt cleaner than it had in days. I didn't look back. By the time the moon sank behind the hills, I was already halfway out of Nashville. A duffel bag in the passenger seat, the rest of my life in the trunk. I didn't leave a note. I didn't turn on music. I didn't text a single soul. I crossed the city limits just as the first light of morning broke. The new cottage sat at the edge of Knoxville, near the Smokies. Stone exterior, modest porch, a small attic I didn't need but liked knowing was mine. The landlord had accepted my 6-month lease and cashier's checks. No questions asked. That was the point. No one knew where I was, and I liked it that way. The first thing I did after unlocking the door was turn off my phone. Not just silent. Off. I placed it in a drawer and shut it. That drawer hasn't opened since. Next, I transferred every cent from my public accounts to a private one, changed my passwords, deleted LinkedIn, scrubbed old photos from Instagram, unfollowed every name that echoed too loudly in my chest. I didn't block them. I didn't need to. Their silence had always come first. I was just matching it now. A few days after settling in, I returned to Nashville once, quietly. I left one envelope with the front desk of the wedding venue. Inside, a copy of the final invoice I'd paid. On top, a post-it note written in my best handwriting. Thanks for nothing. No signature. When I got back to Knoxville, a manila envelope sat in my new mailbox. No return address. It was my wedding invitation to Luna's ceremony. Unopened, returned, not refused, not undeliverable, just rejected, like I had been, again and again. I didn't cry. I placed it under the sink with the rest of the paper I planned to burn come winter. A week later, Rowena forwarded me a headline. Tech startup Nimbus Edge under financial audit after anonymous tip. Below it, a subheader. Founder Clarice V. declines to comment. I didn't forward it. I didn't save it. I just read it once and closed the tab. Sandra called again, then Glenn emailed. Subject: we should talk. Please. I didn't reply. There was nothing left to explain. I spent my days differently now. Most mornings, I volunteered at a historical archive on the edge of town, cataloging letters, cleaning dust from postcards written in the 1800s. Stories nobody remembered, but someone had once cared enough to keep. Some afternoons, I made tea and sat on the porch, listened to birds I didn't know the names of, watched the sun trace slow, deliberate lines across my little patch of sky. They didn't know where I lived. They didn't know if I was okay. And for the first time, I was. I didn't need closure from them. I needed peace. And this quiet, unfamiliar life I built alone? It wasn't loud, but it was mine. No one had power over it. No one could touch it. And every silence that used to cut me, now it felt like a boundary, like breath, like home. This box does not accept apologies. And the silence I hear every day now, it finally sounds like mine. Before I go, let me leave you with this. Sometimes the loudest act of love is choosing yourself. For too long, I mistook loyalty for silence. I believed being the helper made me valuable. But love that requires you to disappear is not love. It's control dressed in tradition. And family that only embraces your sacrifices, but never your boundaries, isn't family. It's an audience. I didn't burn bridges. I built a door. And if you've ever felt like the too much in someone else's story, maybe it's time to write your own. So let me ask you, have you ever had to walk away from the people you love just to protect the peace inside you? Or maybe you're still standing at that line, wondering if it's okay to leave. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? What part of this story hit home? Or just drop a 1 if this made you feel seen. If you didn't like the video, I still want to hear why. Let's keep the conversation real. And if you want more stories like this, raw, honest, and full of heart, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's coming next, because your voice matters. And sometimes, hearing someone else's story helps you tell your own.
That's what my contract states. Tidy up and leave a single dime in a sealed envelope. It disintegrated readily in my hands. After 30 years of work, my company is required to pay me this pension. James Anderson, the president at the moment, is the one making fun of me. He was the youthful, second-generation president, and he left me feeling hollow and hopeless. I no longer feel any connection to this company. This corporation no longer values its employees. They have undergone too much change. I just nodded and accepted the packet, saying, "Understood." I immediately went to the room for systems management and erased the data from the company's management system. Although you may find it inhumane, this is a requirement of the contract. I cleaned up in accordance with the contract, just as the president had requested. That is the only thing involved. Hey, I'm unable to send emails. I am unable to access the internal system. What is happening? Moments later, there's a ruckus in the office. The president comes running to me in a panic, looking pale. "Hey Joseph, how are you doing?" Armored, I turned to face him. That was the start of my protracted conflict with the company's second-generation president. Joseph Taylor is my name. I'm 49 years old. I've spent a long time working for the same organization. I've been here since just after high school, making me the oldest employee. In an era where changing jobs frequently occurs, I could be regarded as unique. In my capacity as a manager, I am responsible for system management. Although it might be difficult, I enjoy my rewarding job. Because my juniors have become more capable, I have had less job to do lately. Everything in life has gone well. I apologize, Mr. Taylor. There seems to have been a mistake, but I'm not sure what caused it. Chris Johnson, my outstanding junior, is this person. I turned to look at the screen when he asked. This code is incorrect. This is how it ought to be. Oh, I see. As anticipated, Mr. Taylor. I sincerely appreciate it. Chris smiled brightly, and I couldn't help but laugh. I'll be turning over system management to you shortly. I am depending on you. Oh no, I haven't arrived yet. What topic are you discussing? I'll be 50 years old soon. How do you plan to spend my retirement? You still have over a decade left. Mr. Taylor, you're getting ahead of yourself. Being in his 30s, he hasn't yet realized how rapidly time passes. But until I retire, I intend to put in a lot of labor. After 30 years of work, my company is required to pay me this pension. Systems research is moving at a fast pace, and I will soon lag behind if I don't continue to study. Yes, before that incident occurred, I was content and felt fulfilled in my profession in such a capacity. It came on abruptly. Robert Anderson, the president, required hospitalization after unexpectedly becoming unwell. James, his only son, swiftly rose to prominence as the second-generation president since there was no chance of his recovery. James spoke passionately in his inaugural address. We're all confused by this unexpected event, but now is the moment to come together and develop. Let's make a change right now. His animated speech was a breath of fresh air to the disheartened staff. James exuded a charisma that inspired confidence in his ability to effect positive change. His speech touched me, and knowing him from his time in the subsidiary, I knew he would do a great job continuing his father's heritage. But this hope did not last long. He focused on efficiency and cost-cutting early in his term, implementing abrupt organizational changes, staff layoffs, and human transfers. The office fell into disarray very soon. The way senior, long-serving staff members were treated was the worst. The president began reducing them because he said they were impeding the development of younger employees. Instead of firing them right away, he demoted them and so decreased their pay. Skilled salesmen were transferred to back office positions, forcing support staff, who failed in their frontline roles, to quit. On the other hand, youthful workers received preferential treatment and promotions if they had the necessary abilities. I would have understood, but in reality, the evaluations didn't reflect their abilities. Talented young workers lost trust in the company and left. Eventually, Only the president's young sycophants, who benefited from the undeserved perks, remained. Today, another of my trusted colleagues is leaving the company. He was an outstanding salesperson who boosted our revenue. Thank you for everything, Joseph. Yeah, but why do you have to leave? Who knows, but I'm tired of trying so hard here. Then he sighed and said, Joseph, you're the only one who can manage the systems in this company. You'll be fine. Hang in there. I felt tears rise to my eyes and gazed down at him as he forced a grin. I should be smiling as I wave him off, at least for the final time, viewing the back of a departing buddy. How many times have I experienced this annoyance? You would expect that a strike would result from this, but none did. Gifted individuals just disappeared, leaving only the industrious, the resigned, or the loyalists to President James. I was among the diligent ones. I still had a strong desire to hold onto this firm that I owed so much. The company's performance was clearly deteriorating. As anticipated, President James appeared quite distressed. We'll get over this. It's probably just a reaction to the most recent organizational changes. It resembles crouching just before a leap. When I witnessed him telling his supporters this, I was abhorred. Your remarks are different as long as there are some who are praising him with the phrase, as expected of the president. He'll never own up to his errors. I sighed and went back to the system control room, where Chris was waiting. We had a conversation right away. Big news, Mr. Taylor. The president is coming to inspect the system management room today. What? Rumor has it that, after personnel changes, he's now targeting the company's fixed costs and considering cost-cutting measures for the system. What should we do, Mr. Taylor? Well, there's not much we can do. President James seems to like making cuts to the core parts of the company. It's good that he's enthusiastic about his new role, but his focus is off. After a while, President James arrived at the system management room where we were. He glanced around the room with a puzzled look as if trying to figure something out. Isn't the air conditioning too high? Heating and cooling costs are significant, you know. Computers are sensitive to heat, so it's for management purposes. I see. Ignoring the basic questions from President James, I immersed myself in my work. For some reason, President James only asked questions and talked to Chris. He should know I'm the manager, but he barely acknowledged me. After looking around for a while, he finally spoke to me. Joseph, right? Yes. Surprised, I stopped what I was doing and looked at him. How long have you been working here? 30 years. 30 years? That's a long time. His overly casual tone made me a bit annoyed. Sure, I'm his subordinate, but as someone older, this feels too informal. I noticed that your base pay is rather substantial. Was that the arrangement when you were employed? Yes, it was. But now Chris here is also managing the system, right? Well, yes. Although I felt uneasy about it, this was President James and I's first one-on-one meeting. Seeing this as a chance, I made the audacious decision to advise the president. Regarding the system, Mr. President, I do not advise switching from the one that is in place. President James arched an eyebrow, but I went on. A lot of the employees are currently unfamiliar with their new roles as a result of the recent personnel changes. Adding to that, altering the system will simply result in even less efficiency. It's up to me to decide, President James cut in. I shut my mouth, obviously unhappy with what I had spoken. I had never seen him look that harshly at someone before, but he scowled at me. A worker such as yourself, daring to challenge the president's choices. Recognize your location. I'm sorry. You were the manager, right, Joseph? I'll give you a lot of thought, just like I do the sister. He made a snide comment before leaving. Chris sighed in relief, having been watching our encounter with nervousness. I started to get a chilly sweat. You're incredible, Mr. Taylor. I'm sorry for creating an awkward atmosphere, Chris. No, it doesn't bother me. Your viewpoint makes great sense, in my opinion, but the president was incredibly annoying. How does he think? Probably nothing good. I scowled and gave it some thought. Chris and I then made the decision to talk about our future intentions. When I was summoned to the president's office a month later, President James broke some startling news. "What did you say?" "I expressed my gratitude for your diligence. President James really said that I was being fired. You may now relax." He handed me a small packet and grinned, explaining that it was for business, not personal, reasons. "This is your employer pension." Receiving a cheap-looking envelope instead of a bank transfer gave me a bad feeling. Still processing the information, I took the envelope and peeked inside, noticing it wasn't even sealed. Inside was a single dime, a copper coin. "Mr. President, this isn't funny, even as a joke." "Of course not. It's not a joke." President James placed the document he had been holding onto his desk and motioned for me to look at it. I recognized it immediately. It was the employment contract I had signed 30 years ago when I joined the company. President James tapped a specific section with his finger. "See here? It says your employer pension is 10 cents. My eyes widened in disbelief. Next to the section about employer pension, which stated employer pension provided, someone had handwritten 10 cents, clearly written in ballpoint pen. President James traced over it triumphantly. "I didn't write this. It was already there. It's an amusing note, isn't it? But you without a doubt signed and stamped this contract, didn't you?" "This is." I opened my mouth to protest, but President James cut me off again. "It's according to the contract. Clean up and leave." His expression told me that arguing was futile. I was probably marked for some time. I represented the kind of long-serving employee President James wanted to push out. The reason I hadn't been targeted yet was because I managed most of the company's systems. However, after his last inspection of the system management room, he must have decided that Chris was capable enough. It's also easy to guess that my advice back then hit a nerve. What a childish and narrow-minded president. A company with a president like this has no future. The faces of my colleagues who were forced to leave before me came to mind. I understood. I smiled and left the president's office. I stuffed the thin envelope into my pants pocket and headed straight to the system management room. I talked to Chris there, who was standing by. Now was the time to carry out the plan, Chris. So it came to this. "All right, I'm ready." Chris and I took a seat at our PCs and erased every management system in the organization. Building a system is difficult, but it can be dismantled quickly. After a while, I heard terrified screams coming from different parts of the workplace when I carefully opened the door to the management room. "Hey, I am unable to send emails. I'm unable to access the internal system. What is happening?" The staff was overwhelmed and powerless to intervene. President James hurried over to me, pale and distraught. "Joseph, what did you do?" He said something casual to me in his stress. Gently turning to face him, I responded, "I just cleaned up as you asked." "By personal belongings, you meant. Why did you decide to erase the system?" "Since the system belonged to me, I erased it. I was merely tidying up the items I had provided to the business." "What?" I showed him the working conditions notice. Having simply glanced at the employment contract, he must not have been aware of this condition. It was made very explicit in the document that I was lending the system, that my income covered the loan, and that I would return the system when I resigned. "What is this document?" "It's the notification I got from the business 30 years ago. You also probably have a copy on file." "I'm not familiar with this. It's ridiculous that one employee leaving means the entire system is rendered useless." I wanted to say, but refrained, that it is insane to offer an employer pension worth a single dime. "If you cancel my dismissal, I'll return both the system and this dime." "Chris, restore the system immediately." President James yelled at Chris as he pushed my hand away from the packet I had given him. "But it will take time." "I don't give a damn. Execute the task as soon as you can. Yes, Chris, he replied as he obeyed instructions and started to fix the system. After exchanging a quick glance with him, I departed from the system management room where I had spent so many years working. I quietly stoked a fierce determination to oppose President James. A few days later, while I was relaxing at home, my phone rang. When I looked at the screen, it was the main number from my former company. I answered and heard President James's defeated voice. "Joseph, we're in trouble. Chris is struggling to restore the system, and no work is getting done." These past few days included the weekend, so President James must have assumed the system would be fixed by now. But it wasn't, and the system was still down. On the first day back to work, despite having addressed me informally before, he now humbly sought my help, which almost made me laugh. "So, what do you expect me, an outsider, to do?" "Let us buy the system from you. I'll pay $100,000. "No. $200,000. I couldn't help but laugh at the offer. President James really didn't understand the market value. "Are you joking, President? That amount is peanuts for buying that system." "Peanuts? Then how much do you want?" $1 million. $1 million. His voice cracked, and I was more amused than anything. Even $1 million is a bargain for that system. "What are you talking about? That's more than the employer pension." "Well, it was just 10 cents. "That's not what I meant." Realizing it was time to stop messing with him, I straightened up and addressed President James seriously. "President, I'm serious. If you don't buy it for $1 million, you won't get the system, and I won't help Chris either. This is a disaster. Our work is already behind, and if this goes on any longer..." A long silence followed. I waited anxiously for his response, but then he said, "Enough. I won't ask for your help. How dare you demand such an outrageous amount, you ungrateful person." He rejected my final offer and hung up. I felt a wave of disappointment. Despite the opportunity, it was clear that he couldn't be trusted with the company. I picked up my phone again. It was time to execute the next phase of the plan. The next day, a loud noise erupted in the president's office. The noise came from James, the now former president, pounding his fist on the desk. Why am I being fired? Facing him was his father, Robert Anderson. Though not fully recovered, Robert's presence at the desk was still impressive, and I was moved by it. "I'm not firing you. I'm demoting you to an employee so you can learn from the ground up." Me? A former president working as a regular employee? How humiliating. Humiliating is the chaos you cause within the company, bringing it to the brink. This time, Robert slammed his hand on the desk. James, who had been leaning forward, quickly straightened up. Robert reprimanded him with a voice full of authority. "I was a fool to trust your reports. I warned you not to meddle with personnel, yet you forced out so many trusted people, including Joseph." At this, James glared at me. Indeed, I had devised and executed several plans to address the situation. James's reckless actions had been unbearable. Feeling guilty for bothering the former President Robert during his hospitalization, I had reported the current state of affairs to him. Robert had trusted James' reports without question and felt at ease. However, when he saw my report, he was shocked and realized the gravity of the situation. Deciding to return to the company, it pained me to see him push himself when he was still in need of treatment. But when he said, "I'm glad you reported this, Joseph. My foolish son would have destroyed the company I built," I knew I had done the right thing. Chris and I then devised a plan to change the current situation. We knew that if things continued, I would likely be forced out too, so we decided to make the management system unusable to put pressure on James and other unresponsive employees. This was the only form of resistance we could mount as the systems department. As expected, once the system went down, chaos ensued. James couldn't handle the situation, and even his supporters began to lose faith. The hardworking employees finally spoke up. Resign. Bring back President Robert. For the first time, James faced protest from the employees and was brought before the board. They criticized him for forcing out many talented employees. While it was good to bring in younger staff, the treatment of those who had contributed for so long was appalling. The poor handling of the system trouble within the company was also discussed. The topic of buying my system was brought up. If we can use that system permanently for $1 million, it's a bargain. Why didn't the president buy it? It would take an enormous amount of time and money to rebuild it from scratch. Hearing the employees' trust and affection for the current system warmed my heart. I felt proud that all my hard work in developing the system had paid off. After the board meeting, James was demoted in the president's office. He finally accepted Robert's words with his head down, and prompted, he reluctantly apologized to me. "I'm sorry, Joseph," he said, though he still seemed dissatisfied. I simply replied, "Yeah." Robert, having witnessed our exchange, spoke to me. "I'm sorry for all the trouble. Will you really come back to this company?" Seeing his anxious expression, I smiled. "Yes, as long as you stand as the president, of course." "Thank you. Should we go ahead and pay the $1 million for the system as you suggested?" "That's not necessary. I've already received so much from you," I said. "I see, Robert," and I laughed together. James watched us with a puzzled look on his face. "I'm glad everything worked out, Mr. Taylor. I was really nervous about how it would turn out. You went through a lot, Chris, and you were stuck working through the weekend. I'm sorry about that. If it means making the company a better place, I'd give up my weekends any time. Besides, all I did was pretend I couldn't fix the system." I was back in the system management room with Chris, the key player in this operation. As a technician who had worked under me for so long, he could have easily fixed the system quickly. His outstanding acting was crucial to resolving this situation. Reflecting on the recent events, Chris remarked with deep emotion, "But James was terrible, wasn't he? Offering you a 10-cent employer pension and even faking documents." When he said that, I couldn't help but mutter, "Actually, there's something you should know. The handwritten 10 cents was something I wrote in the contract myself." "What? What do you mean?" With Chris's curiosity piqued, I decided to share an old story with him. It was a story I had never told anyone before, about my younger self and the young president. Back in the day, I was a recluse during middle and high school. I couldn't fit in at school and had trouble communicating. I shut myself in my room and immersed myself in system development, tinkering with my beloved computer. I created original source codes and built my own systems. Robert, my father's friend, heard about my work. He recognized my abilities and offered me a job as a system manager at his company. For someone like me who had been isolated in my room for years, having someone value my creations meant the world. Moreover, he offered me a salary well above average for a high school graduate. Even though I was out of touch with the world, I knew that the amount he was offering was unusually high. I told him I couldn't accept that much, but Robert shook his head. "This is still cheap. Our company is just starting, and this is all we can afford now. But we will increase it with raises. This system is that valuable." I took the job contract in an immature, impetuous moment and wrote something on it with a ballpoint pen. I put 10 cents next to the term employer pension. Robert's gaze expanded. 10 cents. 10 cents is acceptable. I feel bad taking extra money when I leave because I am paid so much every month. This was my suggestion when I was a young student. Though he presumably wanted to chuckle, Robert instead gave a soft grin and continued, "Let's think of this system as a loan to the company. I'll include that in your work contract and provide you with a document later on. You are free to return the system when you depart, but we will buy it right away. Wouldn't that be the employer's pension?" "Ah, you noticed that. You are incredibly intelligent." His belly chuckle brought me relief. I made the decision to follow him for the rest of my life when I started working there. He was the one who saved me and got me back into the light. Chris inhaled deeply once I had finished this story. So that's what happened with you and the president. Yeah, but I never expected that contract to resurface because of James. Speaking of James, he quit the company not long afterward because he could not bear to be an ordinary employee after serving as president. Along with a friend, he founded his own business, but Robert pointed out that they were having financial difficulties and that things didn't seem to be going well. Robert had numerous obstacles even when he recovered completely and returned. I hoped James would not disturb his dad anymore. Robert said forcefully, "I have to throw him into the valley, just like the lion did." James seemed so driven that I had a sneaking suspicion he wouldn't accept assistance even if he ever asked for it. He had, after all, made the decision to quit the company first. Now that the old president was back, the business was beginning to rekindle its original enthusiasm. To make up for the lost time, Chris and I put a lot of effort into creating a system that is easier to use. I got some unexpected news when I went to the president's office one day. "What? Do you wish for me to work as an executive?" "Indeed. You are my right-hand man now that everything has happened. Eventually, I want you to hold the position of executive vice president. I'm hoping you'll collaborate with me going forward." Executive vice president? My body stiffened as a wave of responsibility washed over me. Taking on an executive role entails managing the entire organization. I would be the president's right-hand guy in my role as executive vice president. Is taking on a role like this really acceptable for someone like me? With his soft eyes as usual, #Robert seemed to perceive my concern. "The next generation is ready, isn't it?" he said to me. "Yes, I'm sure Chris can handle it." Therefore, no issue exists. Let's get the shareholders meeting ready. Additionally, the executive appointment contract needs to be prepared. Robert and I looked at one another and laughed at the utterance of that word. "Make sure you don't write 10 cents on this one." "Oh, please, hurry up." I refused to. Warmth filled the room as we laughed together. Could I, as an executive, bring back my sad-looking colleagues? I felt hopeful when I left the president's office after having that notion. I was really happy that I had defended this company at the time. I was able to come out of my private life and find happiness under the open sky thanks to this company. Although a contract is merely a piece of paper, it connects people, not just myself in the future, but also other people, through time. I'm moving forward for the first time, feeling a fresh breeze. This is terrible. This is really nasty. For whatever reason, she's wearing a high-heeled boot and bare-leg miniskirt in the middle of this heavy snow. Her hair is long, curly, and a light brown color that almost looks blonde. She is the epitome of what a lady should be. How come? Of all locations, is there a gal here? I had no idea what to say because the circumstances were so strange. I am Jason. For a corporation, I am a system engineer. A system engineer oversees and maintains the company's online systems, as the name would imply. I occasionally have to work after hours, outside of typical business hours, in order to make modifications. I might be called in at any time of day or night if there's an issue, and it's not unusual to be on call all day in case something comes up. It's a challenging job. "Hey, would you please come now? We are unable to complete any work because the lines are completely down." I had the day off because it was the weekend, but my boss, Mitch, contacted me in the evening. Mitch is a conceited individual who dictates to others how he pleases. He seems to believe that everything is irrelevant as long as he is all right. I ended up needing to report in for Mitch's weekend work even though I finally got a day free. The unfavorable weather this weekend was caused by the cold wave that began yesterday. I was unsure of the end time, so I took the car to the workplace. When we were finished, it was around 9 o'clock p.m. It was snowing fiercely outside, and there wasn't much people around to witness the snow piling up. "I take it you drive a car," Mitch, who had completed getting ready before me, stated, as though it were clear, "Give me a ride." The web news said that all of the trains were running late, and that there were a lot of people at the stations. Even though Mitch's house is farther away from mine, I doubt I could have made it home without getting him a ride in this circumstance. I drove him home reluctantly, but I was overly optimistic. The snow was about knee-deep when we stepped outside, and the wind felt like a storm. Additionally, there was a mound of snow next to the parking lot entrance, possibly as a result of the direction of the wind. Maybe because there aren't many other cars around. I ran back to the office in a panic and grabbed rubber gloves, a janitor's locker full of Wellington boots, and 2 shovels. To get the car out, I had to shovel the snow first. "Mitch, can you help me out here?" "What? Me? Why? You take care of your car." "It's my car, but I can't drive you home like this." After saying that, Mitch grudgingly grabbed a shovel and started to slowly and unenthusiastically move the snow. The moment we cleared the snow, more of it piled up. Because it was so wet and chilly, we shoveled quietly until we had enough room for the car. However, Mitch hurriedly climbed into the car without even bothering to put the tools away. He even dared to put on the warmth and start the engine. With a sigh, I closed them for the 2 of us. I let the wet instruments air dry by leaning them against a nearby wall. Upon returning to the vehicle, Mitch gave me a fierce look and remarked, "You're slow, you slug." His conceit was almost refreshing at this point. But there was a sound as we were ready to finally hop in the car and drive away. It had the sound of an automobile horn. "What is that? Is there a problem? Perhaps someone is in need of assistance." "Ignore it. There's more snow on top." Mitch insisted he was done shoveling, but the horn would not go off. I couldn't resist being inquisitive. But isn't there nobody else in the vicinity? What if someone truly requires assistance? Not being able to stop it, I walked back outside the automobile, believing that nobody would come to help in such a scenario. Mitch was screaming inside, "I'm not helping." "Do whatever you want," I said, but I quickly sprinted into the deep snow after grabbing the shovel Wellingtons and rubber gloves I had left outside to dry. Eventually, I followed the alarm sound and discovered a car partially submerged in snow. It was in a horrible state and parked in an open lot. A young woman was standing close by. She was strangely dressed in a miniskirt, bare legs, and high-heeled boots amid this deep snow. Her hair was long, lightly curled, light brown, almost blonde. She appeared to be the epitome of a lady. "Oh man, this is seriously bad." The girl kept reaching into her pockets and fiddling with the contents of her purse. What's wrong?" "The vehicle won't start. Looks like I might have misplaced my key." "Yes, it's awful, right?" "Wait, if you don't have the key, the car won't move, right?" She probably tried to open the door without the key, setting off the auto security system and setting off the alarm. She kept trying to open the door because she didn't understand this, or maybe because she was terrified, but the alarm wouldn't go off. I told the gal not to touch the door for the time being while I considered my options. It is impossible to find the key in the snow, and it will take a long time to dig the automobile out due to its deep burying. It turned out that she needed to go close to Mitch's house when I asked where she needed to go. I offered to give her a ride in my car as she could come pick up her car tomorrow. I spoke with the woman for a short while as I made my way back to my car. Ashley is her name. Her grandfather is not in critical condition at the hospital, but she received a call stating he wasn't feeling well and hurried over in the deep snow. She frequently assists with her grandfather's care and household chores because her mother and grandmother are preoccupied with their jobs. In addition, she enjoys living and is pursuing her studies to become a care manager. My grandpa really spoilt me, and since my mom and grandma work, it's only natural for me to help out, she remarks nonchalantly, not boasting about anything particularly noteworthy. Her appearance and manner of speaking led me to believe that she was frivolous, and I felt bad about it. Are you serious? That is quite remarkable. I sincerely apologize for my misinterpretation. I simply believed you were just some gal based on the way you looked. For real? That's crazy. But everyone thinks that, so it's fine. I'm a gal after all. She laughs off brightly. More importantly, I'm going to post this on social media, so take a picture of me. She starts taking pictures with the heavy snow in the background. Let's take one together as a memory. I'll cover your face. She includes me in the picture. She immediately edits the photo and posts it on social media with the caption, "This snow is crazy." I'm relatively young myself, but I wouldn't think to do something like that. I haven't had many opportunities to interact with someone like Ashley, but it's refreshing and quite interesting. You're so slow. What were you doing? The snow must have piled up again. When I return to my car, Mitch is furious, having to wait. Moreover, the entrance of the parking lot is starting to get buried in snow again. I'd admit we're late, but his attitude is unacceptable. Still sitting in the car, he demands me to hurry up and clear the snow. Ashley sees Mitch and says, "What's with this old guy? If he wants it done faster, he should help too." Who is this silly girl? I'm a department head, his boss. I don't care. You're not my boss. Maybe you should quit a company with such a boss. Want to come work at my grandma's company. Ashley rebukes Mitch sharply while helping with the snow. Their back and forth is almost like a comedy duo, and it lightens the mood. I say, "Wow, your grandma is a president? That's impressive." Right? I may not look like it, but I'm a princess, Ashley jokes. Then Mitch got mad at me again. Just do it. Hurry up. While repeating this process, I somehow finish shoveling the snow and drive them, calming the two who are still bickering in the car. After that, Mitch starts to see me as someone who can handle troublesome people effectively. A few days later, when the snow has completely melted, Mitch calls me in. This time it's during regular business hours. Thinking it might be another system issue, I head over, only to be told there's a complaint from a major client. Handle it. Why me? I'm an engineer. Then, bringing up Ashley, he says, "You're good with difficult people, right? Just handle them like you did with that girl the other day," making an unreasonable request. Even though I argue that this situation is different, I'm somehow persuaded and end up going to the client with Mitch. The client is a company we do a lot of business with. Today, President Thompson, the head of the company, will handle the matter personally. I hear that President Thompson is a tough and renowned woman in her 60s. Feeling nervous, I'm led to the reception room. When President Thompson arrives, she looks at me and says, I've seen you somewhere." But I have no recollection of her. Still, she seems intrigued and examines my face closely. Well. Today, I brought Jason, our customer relations specialist, says Mitch, making up a non-existent department name and intending to leave everything to me, an engineer. Moreover, the complaint is about a sales-related issue completely unrelated to me, and I have no idea what's going on. As I'm wondering what to do, President Thompson suddenly says, "I remember," and shows me her phone. There's a photo of me and Ashley on it from the other day in the snow. "My granddaughter sent this to me. This is you, right?" "Your granddaughter." Jess called Ashley. Turns out Ashley is President Thompson's granddaughter. Since her childhood, Ashley, interested in fashion and hairstyles, used to wear and create her own unique styles, often attracting attention from her peers in school for her distinctive ideas. Starting around middle school, she embraced the gal style, drawing even colder judgment from society, often judged solely by her appearance without anyone bothering to understand her. However, on the day she met me, she happily told her grandmother, "I met such a nice guy. He helped me with shoveling snow and even gave me a ride home when I was in trouble." It's the first time someone outside my family has been so kind." She was thrilled and sent her photo to President Thompson. She always looks out for her grandpa and is a great kid, aiming to be a care manager. But it's a shame she's not understood due to her hobbies and preferences. Sighs President Thompson. At first I thought, why does she dress like that? But she hasn't changed since she was little. I was embarrassed to have thought that about my granddaughter. You're the first to really see her for who she is. She seems so happy. I want to thank you for that. Really? Thank you. She expresses her gratitude. Then, glaring at Mitch, she says, "And I heard from Ashley that you're an engineer. The original person in charge should be Mitch here, right?" Seeing right through it, it seems she has always had a lack of trust in Mitch's casual approach. Meanwhile, Mitch turns pale upon hearing what President Thompson had to say. He must be regretting speaking ill of the president's granddaughter. Then Mitch's phone rings. It's a call from the company, and Mitch's complexion worsens even more upon answering. Apparently, a video that seems to feature Mitch has been posted on social media. The video, uploaded from Ashley's account, shows the interior of my car on that snowy day. Though the faces are hidden, it's clear that it's from when I was driving Mitch and Ashley. What's up with this gal? What a waste of time helping someone like her. I'd like to see what her parents look like. Such a foolish girl. Mitch is caught on video hurling insults at me and Ashley. The comments are overwhelmingly critical, saying things like, "That's awful. I wouldn't want a boss like that." It has become a hot topic on social media. A colleague who was checking social media for work found this video and recognized Mitch's voice. Soon, an attitude in the office is abuzz with this rumor. You always blame others when things go wrong. As someone in a position of authority, you should take responsibility for your actions. I'll tell Ashley to delete the video, so make sure you apologize properly, President Thompson advised Mitch, who trembled and nodded repeatedly. When President Thompson contacts Ashley, she gets flustered immediately. Upon being told about the social media post, Ashley says, "That one. I just deleted it. I was a bit annoyed when I posted it, but maybe it was rash, showing signs of regret. The individual in question is in front of me right now." She hands Mitch the phone and says, "I'll hand it over so you can talk." With hesitation, Mitch answers the phone and begins to talk. "I apologize. I went too far. I only used your appearance to make a snap judgment about you without knowing anything about you. Really, it's not that bad. Everyone does that. But if you have that attitude, you'll make others despise you, including that guy and the individuals you work with. I take it you're a big shot?" Ashley laughs and forgave him, sounding older than she actually is. "You have to value people," she says. After that, Mitch apologizes a lot. Ashley has such a forgiving heart for her age, and for that I am grateful and full of respect. Caring for others and having empathy are more essential than appearances or age. These characteristics enable us to sympathize with and address the suffering of others. In this instance, Ashley's initial upload of the post was removed. It must have occurred to you that you should have removed it before someone pointed it out of regard for them. Now that you know, Mitch, please bring a better strategy by next week. I have faith in you, President Thompson says. Mitch gave a gloomy nod. After that, Mitch kept showing up for work as usual. However, after some time, he relocated to a different branch and filed for a transfer. Within the workplace, there is a widespread belief, if unconfirmed, that he is the person in the video. He felt uncomfortable when he saw the harsh criticism left in the comments section. Even though he was more quieter than normal, he must have felt uncomfortable at his new branch. I pray that he never forgets what Ashley said. As for me, I continue to work as a system engineer and see Ashley on occasion. For a while, she continued to identify as a gal, then one day she made the abrupt decision to stop, altering both her appearance and her speech pattern. I didn't want to bother Grandma indefinitely, but I thought being a gal was my thing. Ashley remarked. Besides, there are people who see me for who I am, like you, exuding a confidence and attractiveness that was distinct from her gal days. Maybe now she's revealing the beauty of her inner self. As a care manager, she appears to be leading a fulfilling life. I want to always be reminded not to criticize others based on their age or appearance. The department head Lorraine said, "I'm utterly disappointed in you." And while I cleared my desk, these words pierced my ears. I heard people laughing around me and felt my female boss's icy stare. As a once promising recent graduate, I never thought I would stumble so badly. The one who started it all, Lorraine, grinned menacingly. "I've heard your wife even asked you to leave. The day following the personal adjustment, she served you with divorce papers, didn't she? How about it?" Merely contemplating how pathetic it is, Lorraine mockingly laughed. I gave her a short glance before raising a cardboard box containing my possessions. The only thing my wife left behind when she left was the divorce papers. She left with our savings in addition to the items. I suppose that was a reflection of my shortcomings as a spouse. Her harassment by my new female employer was the reason I was transferred to a remote backwater. Even though Lorraine would frequently scoff at me, I never imagined that I would be held accountable for her faults at work. I was moved to a branch office in the country and blamed for them. I got married straight out of college, and my ex-wife left me because she felt I had let her down. Jordan, one of my coworkers, approached me while I was packing. "I'm going to miss you around here." I'm at a loss on what to do. I'm not required here anymore. Then there must be something for you to do in the new place you're going to. Possibly. I appreciate everything. See you later. I moved to the rural town shortly after leaving my prior position with everything I owned. We are so happy to have this young man join us at the beginning of the year. Welcome on board. Salutations. Everyone at the branch office greeted me warmly on my first day of work, even hosting a welcome party in the conference room. I didn't get the same treatment in head office as I did here. Man, this place is filled with elderly employees who hardly know how to use current technology. That's about all we can do with Word. We can type just like we used to on a typewriter. Do you even know what a typewriter is? Yes, I do indeed. You can now demonstrate to us how to use these new phones to send emails and take pictures and movies. I'd also like to learn more about apps. We were having cocktails when I couldn't help but ponder deeply. It's true that hardly many young people reside in this isolated town, and I was shocked to learn that the majority of staff members at this branch office were retired retirees. At this age, having a job is good, but we're not techies. Nobody is available to educate us how to use computers, thus we are having problems with them. You're correct. Excel is even unusable for us. Everything we do just takes a long time, since we still work with pen and paper. Even when we post a job for a part-time position, we are unable to locate somebody with computer abilities. I see. I questioned my ability to succeed in such a setting. I had little choice but to start working at this branch office, where I was warmly greeted despite my reservations. I had to educate senior staff members the fundamentals of computers the following day at work. Let's investigate. First, create a simple Excel chart. Then, maybe use a function from the advanced course. I printed up 4-sized guides that were carefully designed for each person. I thought that by using the manuals, I would be able to stop them from saying things like, "Oh, I asked about this before, but I forgot." The older employees were inquisitive and prone to forgetfulness. I took notes so that I could make the manual's extensive graphics and drawings as plain as feasible. Another difficulty was the company's outdated computers. I worked with headquarters to set up a rental service for newer PCs. There ought to be no more justifications for why someone can't perform office work. I just have a question. Before I arrived, who was managing the office job since no one knew how to use Excel? Perplexed, I inquired with my coworker, Henry, about it. Emma was the one. Emma. She is Max's daughter, and Max lives close by. After graduating from college, she was hired in a city, but her employer failed because of the recession. She returned home after failing to secure employment elsewhere. She was employed here as an office clerk for a while before having to leave because of some family matters. Well, with what happened, it couldn't be helped. What happened? It's nothing, nothing. Henry went back to his desk without saying anything else. She had no other job in this town, so why did she quit? What would have occurred? I had been thinking about this Emma girl for a long time. After a while, the weather unexpectedly changed one weekend. It was beautiful one moment and pouring rain the next. Not even that I could hang the wash outside. As I peered out the window, contemplating, someone paid a visit to the ancient house I was renting. The doorbell rang again as I went to the door, where I saw a sodden woman from the rain. Hello. What took place? You're completely drenched with water. What is happening? I was compelled to ask the woman. Hello. I apologize for bothering you. My dad vanished from sight. Have you noticed any old men around here wearing pajamas? No, I haven't seen anyone. When she heard that, she lowered her gaze and remarked, I see. Your father is missing, I inquired, passing her a towel. When I asked, she gave me a subtle nod. Have you contacted the police? I have, indeed. Even now, they're looking for him. The public address system proclaimed the disappearance of an older man, Max Iron, 58 years old, with a medium build, seemingly on cue. Max, hold on. Emma, are you there? Yes, I am that person. I was somewhat aback to see it was Emma, the same woman Henry had mentioned at work the previous day. The former worker for our business. Her father was the one who was absent. I went on to tell her that I was employed by the same company that Emily had worked for in the past. She began to tell a story, appearing somewhat relieved. She informed me of her father's dementia and how her need for care caused her to resign from her position. Even though it was difficult for her to make ends meet, she managed somehow with the help of the government and her meager resources. But lately, my father started wandering off frequently, and I can't deal with it on my own anymore, she continued. I see. I've discussed with his care manager the possibility of putting my father in a care facility, she sighed. However, I'm not sure if it's the best course of action. I feel bad about checking Dad into a care home, especially since he helped me pay for college. Perhaps I ought to keep looking after him on my own. Her eyes filled with tears. She must have spent a long time contemplating this on her own. I see. That must be really tough. Thank you for sharing this with me. Oh, I should be going now. Are you going to continue looking for your father on your own? Yes, I can't keep bothering others with this. You should change out of those wet clothes, even if it's warm outside. Her face turned red, embarrassed. She hugged herself and looked down. Oh no, I'm sorry for my appearance. Just then, the emergency broadcast resumed. Max has been found safe. Thank you all for your assistance. Oh, they found my father. That's great to hear. Yes, I'm so glad. Thank you, she said with a smile. I found myself worrying about her and impulsively offered my help. If you like, I can come with you to pick up your father. I can bring my car right now. But that'll be too much. We've just met. I'm an employee of the company you used to work for. I heard about you from others. Given the situation, let me help you. Okay, thank you. She reluctantly agreed to my offer. After that, I drove her to pick up Max. Exhausted, Max was sound asleep in the hospital bed. He had been found with a bruised hip and was scheduled to get some tests done the next day for precaution. He was admitted to the hospital, and I ended up driving him home. It must be really tough taking care of your father all by yourself. Not at all. It's something everyone does. During the drive, we talked a lot. She seemed anxious about her future as she was unable to work but had to care for her father. "I'd prefer to stay at home as much as possible," she said, looking vulnerable. Hearing her story, I came up with a suggestion. "But I'm not sure if I can manage it. I'm already overwhelmed with my father's care. It might be better to consider placing your father in a care facility sooner. What if something like today happens again, and he's not found?" "That's true, but at least in a care facility, the risk of him wandering off would be significantly reduced." "I know. I'll think about it. Thank you for your advice." I might have been interfering, but I thought something needed to be done for her before it was too late. Shortly thereafter, I decided to bring up a matter at the company. I made a suggestion that some of the computer-based tasks should be outsourced. The proposed contractor was Emma. "I'm anxious about balancing work from home and caregiving, but I'll give it a try. Having some income will make life a bit easier as well." "I agree. I'll do my best." The company quickly approved the proposal, and Emma began assisting with our office work. She also started searching for a care facility to take in her father. Continuing caregiving without a job was financially challenging, and to avoid repeating her father's missing incidents, it seemed necessary to find a facility for him. "I'm missing living with my father, but I've realized it's selfish of me to keep him at home," she said with a wistful smile. Sometime later, a place for her father in a facility was secured, located next to the hospital in town. It provided reassurance of immediate medical care if needed. Emma told me about this with a smile. "That's great. Your work is highly praised at the company now. Would you consider coming back to the office to work with us? There's no need for you to work from home anymore. Teaching everyone about computers is quite a task for me." I offered it while laughing, and she looked surprised and said, "Really? Is that acceptable?" "Indeed. The business really wants to rehire you. How do you feel?" "Yes, please. I would be honored to accept that offer," she said with excitement. I replied, No. Thank you for coming back to our team." Emma came back to work for us after being rehired. "Looking forward to working with you again," she concluded. "It feels great to have you back. The office will be more lively with you there. I'll do my best again." I got a flutter of joy as I saw her dazzling smile. I wasn't sure at first if I would survive in this small town, but I'm beginning to feel confident. Jordan, an old colleague of mine, told me before I got here, and I instantly remembered, "There must be something for you to do." Yes, there must be something for me to do here. With a feeling of destiny, I made the decision to always give this town my all. You are nothing at all. Mary, the recently hired manager, laughed and said, "I'm taking your pay." My salary? Yes, that is what I am expressing. I ought to collect the unemployed workers' salaries. That makes it more meaningful. I have to provide for my wife and kids. I can put up with her losing her mind at work, but not getting paid is another matter altogether. Since I graduated, I have been employed by this company, and I have had nothing but kindness from the president. I wanted to stay here and work, but I can't put up with a boss that is so controlling that he is threatening to withhold my pay. If so, I'm quitting. I'm grateful for everything you've done so far. Oh, so you're giving up? We saved the income we would have given you, so that's ideal. The staff members who were seeing the conversation between Manager Mary and myself were agitated. They must have concerned what my departure would mean for the project. Nevertheless, Manager Mary mentioned something improper for a manager, not knowing my position. I could no longer remain at this company in order to safeguard my family. I'm Will Miller, and I'm 43. At Thomas Info, an aid company, I am a salaryman. This is a local small-scale aid company that develops systems. We occasionally have to deal with irrational expectations from the principal contractor because we also take on subcontracting jobs. Although we used to work extra until 10 p.m. 10 years ago, the work style improvements implemented recently have made it less unpleasant than it was in the past. I work for Thomas Info in a certain capacity. Although I'm not heavily involved in the development process itself, it's a very significant function. I frequently work outside the office to complete my duties. As a result, there were times when I worked remotely from the workplace. After the former manager retired, a new manager was assigned to Thomas Info's development department one day. I was curious as to who would be selected, and it turned out to be Mary Wilson, a stranger from outside the organization. It appeared like she was in her late 30s. "I'll be the development manager starting today. Wilson, Mary, it's good to meet you. Try not to cause too much difficulty for me, even though I'm sure you're all incompetent." When the staff heard this haughty greeting, they knew that someone unpleasant had arrived. I was concerned about how the development department would react to having someone of that caliber in charge. "Who is that person?" a woman whispered to me from nearby. "She is Nancy Smith, a woman in her 30s who works in the same development department as me." "Well, is she famous in the industry, or did she get the job through family connections?" Manager Mary appears to be the president's niece based on what I later learned. She is the daughter of Thomas Info's president's sister. We nodded, assuming that her contacts helped her land the job. Although it was a somewhat last-minute appointment, these kinds of relationships are crucial in business management. With that in mind, I decided that Manager Mary's promotion was unavoidable. If there had been no issues afterwards, it would have been OK, but when Manager Mary took over, chaos broke out in the development department. As it happens, Mary knew very little about system development. As a result, there was confusion on the ground due to her inconsistent and off-target directions. "But Manager Mary, if we do it as you say, the system won't work." Silence yourself. Are you implying that you are unable to obey my commands? To obey Manager Mary would be to put a stop to the development process. However, she became furious when I gave her advice. Naturally, her wrongdoings didn't end there. She attempted to work impulsively. However, if the task is abruptly increased, we won't be able to finish it. Why isn't this done yet? But you just told us yesterday, so it's very. She takes her work very lightly. She arrives in the department just prior to the start time and promptly departs after causing havoc. She doesn't seem to care that all of the staff is having trouble keeping up with the additional work that she has caused. If this keeps happening, the project will fail and the staff's irritation will blow up. I talked to her since I was experiencing this issue. Manager Mary, what? I called out, and Manager Mary gave me a frustrated expression. She then looked down on me with a sneer. It's the ineffective man who rarely appears, which is who I was wondering who it was. Are you blind to the problems the department is facing? Admittedly, I only visit the office roughly 3 times a week. But it's clear that Manager Mary is to blame for the misunderstanding in the development department. She should be working more hours if things appear difficult, rather than just informing others. I swallowed my need to retaliate and gave my counsel in the most courteous way I could. Are you having any difficulties carrying out your managerial responsibilities? I'm here to help if that's all right. How conceited. I suppose I am the manager. Nothing is beyond my understanding. Does she not see the urgency, or does she not take ownership of the department's chaos? Manager Mary is unaware that if things keep on this way, the project will fail. Convinced that whispers would be ineffective, I chose to say it straight. I regret to inform you that a large number of staff members are not happy with your current management. The project's advancement has also gone well behind schedule. How come? Manager Mary's thickly makeup wrinkled up in annoyance. Despite feeling intimidated, I continued. It won't be long until the workers' resentment blows up. The project will fail, and the company's reputation will suffer if this goes on. Would you kindly consider our recommendations for the best course of action? The workers in our immediate vicinity listened carefully as I sincerely shared my recommendations in the hopes that things would become better at work, if only somewhat. They have to have anticipated a shift. but she was being so arrogant that she was not going to take my advice. Are you leaving some hostess club since you don't show up too often? Guys who are unpopular are very boring. That's not it at all. I scowled, perplexed as to why she was unable to comprehend. Instead, despite the fact that I barely visit the office roughly 3 times a week, I was being accused of not working. On the other days, I labor outside with diligence. These are all things that only I am capable of doing. Despite having recently taken on the role of manager, it appears that she is unaware of my outside activities. She should normally ask or review the documentation to find out, but she doesn't appear to be interested. Because she is the niece of the president, I could understand that she became a manager overnight. But that's another issue if she intends to cause this much disruption to the development site. You are nothing at all. She laughed and added, I'm taking your pay. My salary. Yes, that is what I am expressing. I ought to collect the unemployed workers' salaries. That makes it more meaningful. That's a bit too much. What? Is there something wrong with that? We should never pay workers who are not productive. I have to provide for my wife and kids. I can put up with her losing her mind at work, but not getting paid is another matter together. Since I graduated, I have been employed by this company, and I have had nothing but kindness from the president. I wanted to stay here, but I can't put up with a boss that is so oppressive that he is threatening to withhold my pay. I resign in such scenario. I'm grateful for everything you've done so far. Oh, so you're giving up? That's ideal, since we were able to save the money we would have given you. Manager Mary grinned and giggled. I'm not terrified of her now that I've made the decision to give up. Do I need to do a handover? Obviously not. There is nothing to turn over because you haven't been working on anything. Comprehensive. Farewell. The workers were yelling at each other as they watched my conversation with Management Mary. They must have concerned what my leaving would mean for the project. Nevertheless, Manager Mary mentioned something improper for a manager, not knowing my position. I could no longer remain at this company in order to safeguard my family. I made the decision to step down and turned in my resignation. I told my wife about the circumstances as well. She agreed with my decision because she had heard me whine about Manager Mary and thought it was a huge problem that I wasn't getting paid. I got it. Why don't you take a little break now that you have the opportunity? Retirement may be the following period in which you are unemployed. Yes, you are correct. The kids won't understand why I'm home all the time if I don't tell them about my resignation. Our finances are sufficient, but in order to provide for my family, I must start a new work right away. My phone kept ringing the next day. I looked at the caller ID and saw that it was the president. I was able to surmise what it was about, but as I had already tendered my resignation, I saw no reason to respond and chose to ignore it. Manager Mary called me as well later on, but it was she who essentially drove me away. Now, what on earth could she want from me? That thinking kept me from answering the calls. The calls from Manager Mary and the president continued for a few more days. But all of a sudden, Nancy called me. I had a good working relationship with her. Perhaps Mary, the manager, or the president asked her to convince me. Still, I chose to take the call since I was curious about the circumstances. Hello, Nancy. How are you doing? Hello. How is business at the company doing? Are you genuinely curious? It's completely disorganized. She grinned bitterly and replied, Well, it's the president's and manager Mary's fault for allowing her behavior. Nancy most likely understood why I resigned because she had witnessed me fighting with Manager Mary. You were doing far more significant work than programming, but Manager Mary was unaware that you were also the project manager. You are useless, she remarked. That's unbelievable. I oversaw the company's ongoing projects in my capacity as a project manager. Although I didn't spend a lot of time in the office, I managed important duties including customer negotiations and progress reporting to make sure projects got done on time. In addition, I negotiated the rights for the programs incorporated into the systems, looked for temporary help when things were moving slowly, and generally handled anything that couldn't be done internally. After realizing you were the project manager, Manager Mary tried to take over your work, but she has so little knowledge of system development that the clients are demanding a different person in charge. That makes sense. The timetable is constantly being jumbled by Manager Mary's arbitrary work additions. We are not sure if we are fulfilling the needs of the client or if the development rights are safe. The accuracy of what we're doing is unknown. We're working so hard, but we have no idea why despite the amount of tasks. It is a bad dream. One might easily envision Manager Mary causing chaos in the development division. I'm sorry for the surviving staff members and customers, but Manager Mary is solely to blame. They ought to address their grievances with her. In addition, she began shifting the responsibility of being the project manager onto other staff members after realizing she couldn't do it. However, how may project management responsibilities be managed by local staff? That's what Manager Mary usually does. I scowled and smiled bitterly. She shouts at people and puts chores on them since she doesn't know how to work. It's a typical poor boss strategy. President Thomas finally called you because he could take it no longer. She is his niece, but he probably wasn't able to defend her anymore. He must have been phoning a lot because he wanted you to return. Thomas Info's president is President Thomas. He was obviously quite desperate because of how often he called. Mary, the manager, also gave a call. She was attempting to assign blame for the mayhem to you, or President Thomas had instructed her to. Have you responded? No, I didn't. It's probably best that way. It would not be ideal for you to handle any irrational charges. As I had already quit and had been informed that there was no need for a handover, I am no longer in charge of the development department. Making contact with them could make matters more difficult. Then I asked Nancy a question I had been considering. Nancy, are you okay? Oh, I'm not at all right. You didn't hear anything offensive. She talked for a long time, but I was so tired of hearing it that I returned it to her. Nancy is a strong-willed woman, so even the male staff finds it difficult to oppose her. Apparently, she also had arguments with Manager Mary. It took place in the tumultuous development department this morning. Supervisor Mary chastised Nancy. Don't act like it's none of your business, you worthless moron. Take action without using a project manager. We are unable to proceed unless you establish a schedule. We work as employees. Decide on your own course of action. I'll seize your pay if you're not even able to accomplish that. Nancy said, feel free, but if you do, I'll take my pay stub to the labor board at that. Manager Mary struggled to find words. She understood that getting reported to the labor board would be a major issue. Then, Nancy was attempted to take on more job by Manager Mary. Take care of this inquiry. I'm not responsible for this and I have no idea how to solve it. Nancy answered coolly, though, believing it was outside the purview of her position. Manager Mary must have been irritated by Nancy's persistent obstinacy. You never stop complaining. Being an inept woman is difficult, isn't it? Stated Manager Mary. The other guys just decide to go ahead and do it without hesitation. I don't think it looks that way. That's what we would call harassment, isn't it? Nancy shot back, a not-so-cute woman acting all high and mighty. Thinking more deeply, it was a waste of time to argue. Manager Mary said as she was leaving. Nancy succeeded in chasing Manager Mary off. I grinned as I listened to her story. You're strong, Riley, being in a position to say that much. Actually, all I did was voice what had to be stated. It's uncommon for her to be allowed to voice her opinions at this company. Manager Mary was forced to concede for this reason. Are you returning to the company? I'm thinking about it. Really? It's difficult to let go after almost 20 years of employment at this organization, starting when I was a recent graduate. I would feel more confident returning to Thomas Info if the working environment is restored than looking for another position. I would be delighted if you returned. So, what's stopping you? It's Mary, the manager. It's clear that Manager Mary is the reason I don't want to go back. She'll keep up her antics in the development division. I had no desire to tidy up her spills. Nancy then said something in a semi-satisfied tone. I believe she may eventually resign. Why do you feel that way? She is the niece of the president. She won't be released so lightly, in my opinion. Well, later on, I heard something. President Thomas gave me another call. I used to ignore the call since I didn't want to get into any difficulty. But after learning certain details from Nancy, I chose to pick up and pay attention. I sincerely apologize, Will. I never thought my niece would act in such a horrible way. What is the company's present state of affairs? It's a total disarray. The clients are quite irate because the project isn't moving forward at all. The workers claim they are unable to continue working for such a corporation. President Thomas let out a long sigh. I'm making a valiant effort to reassure the staff members who are ready to turn in their resignation letters. This is pretty bad, and if it keeps up, our business will actually fail. Resignation letters must be accepted by the company if they are presented. But if they take that action right now, the business will cease to exist. He's requesting that the staff hold off a little bit longer. It resembles trying to stop an impending dam breach. After that, I had a question that had been on my mind. What initially drew Manager Mary to Thomas Info? Well, even among our relatives, we've always had problems with her. Really? I had never before heard that President Thomas had appointed her as a manager out of the blue just because she was related to him. I had assumed that to be the case, but the situation didn't appear to fit. The sole daughter of my sister is Manager Mary. My sister is a secretary at a logistics company where she married Mary, the president. Being the only daughter of the president, Mary was spoiled, and that's what happened. By no means was he putting up with Manager Mary's egotistical actions. I was a little relieved to know how he really felt. Even so, I was somewhat aback to discover that Manager Mary was the president of a different company's daughter. Her conceited attitude seemed more understandable after learning this. She nonetheless managed to graduate from college in spite of her laziness. She was unable to hold down a job, though, and has since changed employment 6 times. She made multiple attempts at dating but was consistently dumped. Even when her relationships and career didn't go well, her pride kept her out of control. I had no idea she had such a convoluted past before coming to work at Thomas Info. Knowing this, I could see why President Thomas chose to appoint someone with her qualifications. I realized he had his troubles and started to feel a little sorry for him, even though I had suffered because of her. She was initially meant to work for her parents' business, but she grumbled that the logistics were too boring. I was forced to take her in since she insisted on working for a company that paid well. My aim was that it would serve as a springboard for her to engage with society. Though he was her uncle and grudgingly granted his sister's and brother-in-law's request, President Thomas undoubtedly didn't really want to appoint her as manager. He had to know what might happen if he promoted her to manager. But in the hopes that it would ease her transition into society, he recruited Manager Mary. It would appear that she was unimpressed with President Thomas's kindness, but I was done with her after this happened. My sister and brother-in-law agreed that we are no longer obligated to spoil her when I spoke with them. They made an effort to assist her in becoming self-sufficient, but Manager Mary completely ignored them. She was full of pride and never felt guilty. Therefore, she didn't have any appreciation for her family's support. I spoke with Nancy as well, and there are some unanswered questions. Could you please return? Manager Mary is going to be fired. Is it all right for me to return? Yes, in fact, we are unable to restore order to this place without you. I apologize for the chaos, but now that you're back, maybe the workers who are considering quitting will think twice. Then what about these prerequisites? I gave President Thomas a suggestion after pausing to consider it. He saw the value in it and agreed. It was agreed that I would return to work at Thomas Info. Manager Mary, meanwhile, received word of her termination. I visited the president's office to talk about this issue. Manager Mary was also called in at the same moment. Rather than brushing her off cold, he offered her an opportunity to speak. Perhaps in an attempt to get her to think things through and find a different way to make apologies. This was President Thomas's final act of compassion. Manager Mary scowled as she saw me walk into the room. Why is he here? What language do you speak? Do you understand why this place has summoned you? Obviously. I'm being fired, which is ridiculous. Why? It's not at all ridiculous. It's obvious that you don't know how the development department is doing. Are you able to offer any defense remarks? Here, if she had taken responsibility for her mistakes, there could have been hope. But Manager Mary answered in a frantic manner rather than expressing regret. Why am I being fired when I've done nothing wrong? It's because you didn't do the handover properly. I wasn't going to give in to her anymore, even if it appeared like she was only going to blame me. You claimed that I wasn't working, and that a handover wasn't required, despite my promise to do it. The development department is currently in a terrible state as a result. It aggravates me to think about it even today. You ought to have mentioned that you anticipated the current state of affairs without a handover. You are the one who is negligent here. You always place the blame elsewhere. You are in charge of the Department of Development. You ought to have fully comprehended my effort. Why were you ignorant of this? Supervisor Mary did not know what to say. She was unaware of the responsibility that came with being a manager. She most likely believed that she could simply boss her subordinates around and get paid a lot of money. Relying on someone who has quit is pitiful. Didn't you let me go because you could manage without me? Cease talking. You claim as much, yet I have the right to sue you for damages due to your careless resignation. This mess was caused by the project manager who left without a handover. It should be you who accepts accountability. You threatened to seize my income, so I resigned. Isn't it excessive to expect me to assume ownership of the project while putting me in charge of charitable work? Salary confiscation. What is it? I didn't say it at all. Mary, the manager, abruptly became knave. She had threatened to seize my pay, of course, but it didn't seem right that she would acknowledge it in front of President Thomas. Obviously, she had no power to set wages. President Thomas seems irritated by her actions. I presented her with a proof. Don't act as though you don't know. I have all of your careless comments on tape. What? How do you mean? My defense. You contradict yourself so frequently that it would be useless to debate who said what. Supervisor Mary never accepts accountability for her statements. I could never tell when I could be falsely accused in a place like this. I discreetly recorded our chats on my phone in case I needed to establish my innocence. Supervisor Mary became pallid. A corporation that records conversations? Unbelievable. Normally, I don't record discussions. I've never felt the need to defend myself until after meeting you. I will play your statements right now if you deny it. Stop it. Manager Mary made a valiant attempt to halt me. She did not want President Thomas to hear her haughty comments. There was only one thing she could do if she did not want the recording to play. So do you admit that you said you would confiscate my salary and that a handover wasn't necessary? Manager Mary said, I admit it, looking absolutely defeated and cornered. There was no turning back from her rejection now. In light of this, I proclaimed, Manager Mary will be let go, and I will keep getting the pay you were meant to get until you retire. I've told the president that I'll repair the project you almost wrecked in exchange. What? Remain less shocked. It is reasonable to take your income since you haven't been working. Manager Mary could barely contain her shock upon learning that I would be collecting her pay. She wouldn't have given a damn if all she wanted was for me to get paid more. It was frustrating, though, that I would be receiving the money intended for her. Stop being absurd. Are you stealing from me? That is. It is not your right to refuse. You are no longer employed at Thomas Incorporated. She protested, but I wouldn't have been inspired to finish the assignment she had already completely botched without this arrangement. If it were my duty, that's one thing, but why should I have to repair the damage that Manager Mary caused? Of course, all I would lose out on is my initial pay if the idea fails. That's why I find the scenario to be really motivating. And there's something else I need to tell you. What is it now? It was terrible enough to be fired and have her money seized by someone she detested. What more is possible? Something about her expression said, Nancy. Yes, Nancy came into the president's office at the summons of President Thomas. It seemed that she had been standing by in the corridor the entire time. I hear you found something. Yes, something that meets your expectations. What is it? What topic are you discussing? Manager Mary became alarmed at seeing President Thomas wearing a severe expression and Nancy grinning. I was aware that President Thomas and Nancy were looking into something pertaining to Manager Mary. Perhaps they had made a breakthrough. She was seen snatching a bank book by the surveillance camera around a week ago. Additionally, a $3,000 suspicious withdrawal has occurred. You can't talk your way out of this, Manager Mary. What? Manager Mary made a sloppy attempt at stealing, but she had actually stolen business funds. She had greatly overestimated the circumstances if she had believed she wouldn't be discovered. Whatever? What my sister said turned out to be accurate. What was said by my mother? Something President Thomas said to the agitated Manager Mary, appearing irritated. She added that you were using your parents' money to pay for hosts and purchase designer items that you could flaunt on social media. And you attempted to steal from our business instead of complying with their attempts to stop you. A lie. That is not what I did. Then why did you take our company's money without permission? Manager Mary recoiled at the harsh comments of President Thomas. Nancy applied further pressure after that. Stealing cash to pay for hosts. I hate you as a fellow woman. Cease talking. How much do you know? No one has ever loved a lady like you who isn't even cute. How pathetic. Nancy remarked, You said that before. That I'm not cute, her veins clearly throbbing. Nancy reacted like an adult should have when she was labeled ugly, but she must have been furious on the inside. My spouse and kids are already here. I've heard your narrative, but I'm not interested in insults from a lady who has to pay a lot of money to hosts in order to receive any attention after being dumped by guys. Manager Mary's face flushed deep red at Nancy's words. She was dumbfounded. She had failed as a worker and a woman. As President Thomas noticed Manager Mary was at a loss for words, he spoke. You've lost your job. We'll compile the proof and notify the authorities of your embezzlement. Police? That's not how far you have to go. Long? Embezzlement is a grave offense. An offense. She must have believed that obtaining her substantial sum of money would be simple and risk-free. It's possible that she was unaware that what she did was illegal. But she has to retrain her fundamentals if she views society with such indifference. One cannot pilfer another's money. You have to apologize if you make a mistake. She needs to start over from scratch if she can't even grasp these basic concepts. She's over 40 years old, but she doesn't have common sense. You have to change for the better by taking the appropriate penalty. When Manager Mary realized how serious all of her transgressions had become, she broke down in tears. She was accused of embezzlement at work. Mary was taken into custody and questioned. It came to light throughout the investigation that she had also embezzled money from guys she had dated. She was accused of fraud, which made her charges more serious. Given the seriousness of her several offenses, she received a 7-year prison sentence. She argued in court that she wasn't at fault, but naturally, it wasn't accepted. Legally speaking, everything she had done was wrong. Maybe a 7-year sentence will make Mary reconsider how she views society. She will probably be in her late 40s when she is liberated, though. She won't be able to start again easily at that age. Her future appears gloomy, even if she manages to learn common sense today. As stated, I'm still employed at Thomas Info. I will get the salary Mary was scheduled to have till she retired if I can bring the project back to life. This is an amazing promise, and it motivates me much to rework the project. When my wife learned that I had found new work and might even be receiving a sizable pay rise, she was happy. It seemed that our kids were unaware of my temporary resignation. I was a little nervous about saying sorry to the clients, but I did apologize and gave them an update on our future plans. We succeeded in carrying on economic dealings with them. Mary was fired, and the development department got back to normal 2 weeks later. After we were able to extend the project's deadline, things started to move forward again. I'm happy to see you back. The project is safe as of right now. You're exaggerating, but I'll do my best. How much the president expects from me is evident in the contract he signed on my behalf. Making this initiative a success was my promise to live up to these expectations.